My thanks to BCCI and Express Computer for giving me an opportunity to be the keynote speaker and start the session. It's a complex topic. It's not so easy, but I'll try to keep it simple because I leave the complexity to the subsequent speakers in the other moderating sessions that we have. In terms of how the role of CFOs evolved over the years, So if you see this is a McKinsey slide that I've decided to take it up. So there are multiple functions in this slide, starting from procurement and ending with internal audit. For the period 2018 to 2021, some of the functions where the direct reporting relationship, how the movement has happened in terms of the reporting relationship importance to the CFO. For example, the procurement, investor relations, all have gone towards the right side, which means the CFO takes a larger role. But in this table, the one thing which I want to draw your attention to is primarily the boxes which have been marked out in yellow: digital, enterprise transformation, cyber security and IT. All of these functions have moved in terms of importance and relevance to the CFO role. I think that is the one important thing, and it is in the context of today's discussions how a tech-enabled organization under the supervision and guidance of the CFO can enable the organization to grow despite the uncertain and challenging times that we have today. Apart from what we saw in the previous slide, and this slide, most of my colleagues also will agree with me, all of them who are in finance or CFO roles, that the increasing regulatory requirements coming across various regulations, be it under the listing regulations of SEBI, the institute pronouncements on various topics, and now we have National Financial Reporting Authority coming on to companies and further requirements from auditors and companies. There has been multiple changes in the Companies Act covering a whole lot of subjects, right from related party transactions to governance frameworks, along with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. The RBI comes out with various guidelines, not necessarily linked to the financial sector. It goes beyond that itself. And last but not the least, of course, GST has, in a way, become far more smoother than what it was before. But as it's a new legislation, its own interpretation, the ever-increasing requirements of reporting and the way we manage compliances has also become, I would say, quite detailed and in some cases even onerous as well. This, what we saw in the previous slide, was more on the regulatory environment as far as India is concerned. But today, any corporate has obviously a direct or indirect linkage to what's happening across the globe. And some of the important things that I want to put it across is the volatile nature of the geopolitical environment that we are looking at now. In fact, as a small statistics, as the title talks about volatile geopolitics, there has been a 90% increase in the geopolitical risk index from the average level, what was existing between 1985 to 2019. There has been a 90% increase, and that shows how much of the geopolitical uncertainty has gone up in leaps and bounds over the recent 4 or 5 years. This in turn obviously has an impact across the globe, both in terms of investment decisions and even ongoing projects across various sectors. The geopolitical situation, or the fragile geopolitical situation, has its, I would say, unintended impact on commodity prices, be it crude, be it metals, be it non-metals, you name it. Also leading to currency fluctuations. I don't want to dwell much on supply chain disruption, like as recent as day before yesterday. The incident that happened in the Red Sea side has created further confusion or the impact of supply chain constraints that we will see for movement of cargoes from the Asian part of the world to the European and the American part of the world using the Suez Canal, Red Sea kind of route. And the development that happened day before yesterday creates further more uncertainty. And these uncertainties are going to come in different forms and shapes at different points of time. I don't think we can ever come to a situation where any of these uncertainties will come to some sort of a more stable and a predictable situation. We are going to be exposed to a life of uncertainty driven by various factors. And some of these are obviously already out there in the slide. Last but not the least, the Western world is experiencing inflation after a long time. And I think it's been since 40 years since the inflation in the Western world is actually crossing emerging markets itself. And that in turn also has an impact of monetary policy tightening, which also means the impact of cross-border cash flows. And what that implications has for emerging markets like ours, only time will tell. Although at this juncture, I think despite all of this, despite all the global uncertainty, I think India seems to be, I would say, a sort of an oasis in the desert in terms of having the right blend of geopolitical, I would say, relationship that we have created, and in terms of tiding over whatever global crisis that seems to be happening at every nook and corner, at every interval of time. One thing is also, although maybe not in the context of today's discussions of tech-enabled finance decisions, but I think it's very important for us to understand that how the world will be in 2050. And if you see that India shares a big pie out that. The important thing out here is India will be providing, virtually speaking, the right skilled population in terms of 2015, whereas globally elsewhere, populations will be either shrinking or aging populations. By 2030, the statistic seems to suggest then 1 out of 6 of the population in the world will actually be more than 60 years old. So when we talk about 2050 and the chart shows India had to have the right size of the working population, which means from an India perspective, I think this is the century, or these are the next 4 decades are really going to be very important for India as a country, and the target to touch 30 trillion economy by 2047, I think seems to be doable if we play our cards correctly. So despite all of these things, what's the kind of role the CFO is squeezed now? Some of them are external and some of them are internal. Some of the external part I just now mentioned in the previous slides, be it supply chain, inflation, because of the geopolitical volatility, macroeconomic shocks, and also the availability of labor across the world and within the country. And some of the internal pressures that the CFO is facing while pursuing profitable growth ranges from how do you manage your staff or your talent within the company, how do you minimize manual processes and increase the pace of automation so that you are becoming more productive. Your ability, as I talked about the various regulatory changes that are happening, also makes the finance discipline or the CFO to go into more accurate financial statements. It need not be necessarily a true and fair view anymore. Possibly a time will come when we are supposed to be responsible for giving a true and correct view. And last but not the least, all of these things, and you have the additional importance of technology and how do you imbibe this technology to ensure that you come out of the squeeze and emerge out victorious. Besides financial reporting, I guess another important thing that is coming out in the front is the blending of ESG into financial reporting. As you may be aware, many of the listed corporates from this year onwards, their entire ESG part has to be also subject to some sort of a reassurance. And going forward, I'm 100% sure 3 to 4 years maybe from now onwards, financial statements will just not be only about numbers. A large part of the companies or the corporate's ESG strategy will actually get blended into the financial statements. And I think it's very important for all of us to ensure that we have the right technology or the right skill sets to combine this ESG framework into financial reporting, which means that while each company talks about its ESG journey, be it on environmental or social or governance, it needs to ensure that it has the right data collection tools to plot out these additional ESG metrics in a more effective way. In terms of, as I said, it's just not financial reporting, it is also about sustainable reporting. So I think it is in the background. What is the backdrop of this entire stuff? Is because the world by 2100, at the current consumption levels of whatever we are consuming of the nature, is going to be warmer by 2.8 degrees centigrade. And that is not something which is immaterial or insignificant. A 2.8 degree increase in the average temperatures across the globe has ramifications which cannot be even thought about in terms of what kind of a seasonal shift it will happen, be it in the distribution of rainfall or any other natural calamities that can come up. I think this is something which we need to be aware of, mindful of, and we need to ensure as corporates have the relevant technology to ensure that the impact of environment, how much is minimized as each of the corporates pursue their growth strategy. When it comes to a slide on the point on verification, it is just not the corporate, its own ESG credentials. As part of net zero initiative, each of our corporates have to also ensure that our supply chain, especially in the Indian context, a major part of our supply chain is through tractions with the MSME sector. They also get converged into the net zero principle. Otherwise, we are into a problem in terms of not being able to meet our own targets. And that's how I want to emphasize when we cover verification. Any questions till now? Should not be a monologue, huh? Okay. So this is something which is relevant to today's discussions or today's agenda. And that is something it is CFOs are to be mindful to ensure that some of these important technologies or technology trends are imbibed in the organizational working. And some of that is a combination of predictive AI or generative AI, the use of super apps while you do business, the adoption of metaverse, industry 5.0 implications, a system to ensure that your data is subject to complete privacy and is not getting misused, using quantum computing and blockchain models to improve the quality of reporting, improve the quality of your financial transactions. So unless and until each of the corporates have a plan or a strategy to adopt any of these technology trends, I think it's very important to be relevant in today's business framework. Coming to specific, in the finance and accounts discipline, what is it something that all of us can do? And I'm sure all of us are doing it in some form or the other. I've just summed it up into 6 broad points here. But here again, if you see on the top left, ERP systems, this is more or less for most of the corporates are actually running on, I'm sure we are running on ERP models for quite a long of time, and I'm sure that most of these systems would have got stabilized. But that doesn't mean that it ends there, because ERP systems, most of them are now slowly moving into the cloud environment. So that is the reason it is still relevant. But the more important thing that CFOs or finance professionals across each of our corporates or domains can focus upon to improve productivity, to improve predictability of business. Until now, the traditional function of a CFO was to report the past. But CFO function today is to take the data of the past and try to predict the future, taking into account all these volatilities in and around the business framework and the environment. And some of the tech tools are RPAs, data analytics using predictive AI, generative AI, machine learning, and all of that stuff. Blockchain is, of course, largely restricted to making the financial transactions more secure. Yeah, the more we adopt into technology, it has its own attendant risks, and the more we depend on data to make decisions, we also should be mindful the fact of cybersecurity. The cybersecurity challenges are actually increasing. So it is becoming more imperative for most of the organizations as they build more and more data points, as they build up and take decisions based on data. It is important that such of these data is protected and not subject to breaches. So a lot of investments CFOs have to pilot to ensure that the data is secure and is not subject to any violations. Coming to the second point, as we talk about using technology trends, it's equally important that the employees in the organization also embrace this technology, which is important that the employees are given the right technology upskilling so as to be relevant in the organization and its activities in the near future. Last but not the least, what we saw in the previous slide was the current technology trends. I'm sure 1 year down the line, when we have a repeat technology conclave like this, the next level of technologies would have shaped up by then. And it is important we are continuously updated on the new technologies to make ourselves more efficient, more productive, more profitable. At the end of the day, it's a challenge out here for the CFO is to, on one side, you need to report the past, and that's how we talk about grounded communicator. And the other side, you need to use the data points to create out what you call a sort of a business-enabled strategic visionary. You need to collaborate with all sections of the organization to ensure that the goals of the organization are met. And you, as the preserver of cash or the controller of cash, I think is responsible enough to be a transformative catalyst to take the organization forward. Last but not the least, all of this has to be blended into the ESG framework while you pursue growth. That's about it. I think I put a context to today's discussions. So looking forward to more set of interactive discussions as we have at least 4 or 5 sessions after this. Thank you.